Thank you for coming tonight to the launch of our very own Rabbi Mendel's first book, Seeds of Wisdom. Rabbi by day, author by night.
But I do believe it would capture a little bit of what I'm trying to do with the book. And it goes like this. A wise man once said, "Our generation seeks knowledge, not understanding." Knowledge is the act of collecting and dispensing information. Wisdom is the exercise of understanding and applying that information. Knowledge is knowing what things are. Wisdom is understanding what they mean. Knowledge can be one-dimensional, where wisdom is multi-dimensional. Knowledge is like the text, and wisdom the context. Knowledge can be likened to the acquisition of puzzle pieces. Wisdom happens when you put them all together. Knowledge is learned and processed. Wisdom is experienced and recognized. Knowledge can be false, but wisdom doesn't lie. When one encounters knowledge, they ask, "Is this information valid?" Upon encountering wisdom, one says, "I knew that all along." Knowledge can be unfeeling, but wisdom is always compassionate. Knowledge talks, wisdom listens. Knowledge addresses the question, wisdom the questioner. They say knowledge is power, and I'd say wisdom is love. Knowledge stimulates the mind, wisdom warms the heart and soul. May I present to you Seeds of Wisdom. The general process is that I went through some 250 interviews. You only saw 2 or 3 minute clips from very long interviews. Some of them were hours long. So on average, these interviews were 40 pages of transcript. The transcript pretty much followed the subtitles that many of you will have read. And I identified sometimes one anecdote out of an entire interview, sometimes 3 or 4 that I wanted to focus on. I wanted to allow in, to touch me and to percolate. And if it resonated after some time, I would write it down. And then I came back to it later on when I actually got down to writing the book. And I chose those ideas that I felt were not particular to a person in a certain set of circumstances, but were actually universal in application and value. Page 91. And many of the stories have a specific context, but as you'll see, what I tried to do is expand the instructional, educational message as wide as possible, to make it more universal than perhaps the specifics of the actual story. And in this story, a man once visits the Rebbe to request his advice regarding a relationship. "Rebbe," he said, "I'm currently going out with a girl whom I like, but she comes from a far less religious background than my own, and she's much less knowledgeable than I regarding Jewish practice. Can this marriage work?" The Rebbe responded, "As you describe it, you would need to guide her in those areas of life in which a Jewish woman must be expert. Surely she can be taught, but that's not a healthy role for a husband. A wife is not a student, and marriage is not a classroom." But what I did at the bottom of these stories, if you have a book and you look through it, you'll see there is a one-liner at the bottom, and that's entirely my own commentary or interpretation. And of course, the whole purpose of this book was to generate discussion, and so it's simply my own version or my own personal sense, but the stories are here for everybody to expand and expound on them in their own way. So the line I chose was, "Marry your spouse for who they are, not for who you'd like them to become." And I think it's very profound because this is not just, of course, related to marriage, but to any relationship. We're very often, I think, one of the great obstacles that I encounter when I speak to couples who are going through a bit of a rough patch is expectations, where one expects the other to become something that they aren't. And I think that perhaps is one of the great obstacles. And perhaps one of the great ways to overcome those obstacles is to let go, and a word I would use is to accept. To accept the person for who they are, not for who they might become. I guess on a lighter note, Rebbe, a woman said in Yechidut, "My daughter is struggling to find a good match. Does she know what she's looking for in a husband?" the Rebbe asked. "She sure does," said the woman, proceeding to enumerate every imaginable quality. "It sounds to me," said the Rebbe, "like you're describing at least 3 different boys." Talk about expectations.